How to make a lead synth that is memorable, how to have two lead synth combined even though one is like super massive and the other one is dreamy. You want both in your tracks and you love melodic techno. Say no more, say no more. We're going to do it. Okay guys, let me show you what we are doing in this video today. So today is all about those melodic techno leads, and this whole session is gonna be used in another video very soon. It's a very cool theme, very cool topic that we're gonna talk about in this other video. It's probably coming next week, so stay tuned. But this video is gonna be the pre-explanation, a deep dive in the synth, because we have two very strong synth here. One that is very dark, and then one that is very bright and very kind of melodic. And we want to check them both out in this video. So let's start with the heavy Pluck over here. So this is some kind of anima, in general, melodic techno style Pluck, right? We have this a lot in melodic techno right now. And you can see that we're playing D in two different octaves. We have some 1/32 notes here, and yeah, basically that's just the usual pattern for those kind of bass plucks. And if you listen closely, if you have a good listening setup available right now or some good headphones that you can already hear, there's some super interesting delay and reverb happening. So before we look at this, we're gonna have a look at the sound design here in Serum. So first of all, you can see that we are using some kind of weirder wavetables for this one, so not the usual saw square thing that I'm a big fan of, like just using the easiest waveforms possible because it feels natural. This time I wanted a very unique structure in the frequencies, right? So I decided to go for those a little bit more different wavetables. So first of all, we have this pulse wave Genji and then this pulse wave C64, and both are very interesting. We can listen to them without anything else. So this one gives this very pulse wave, thin but edgy kind of feeling to the sound. It's also on -1, so it gets even more richer harmonic overtone structure. So just a little deep dive on that. The lower you are playing something, like the closer the harmonics will be together, the higher you go, right? Because essentially, when you start very low, the harmonics that are far away from each other are still in the low frequencies, and then you get closer and closer. So this is why like a big Moog sound in a very low octave can sound so harsh, right? Because you have those very thick harmonics at in the top end of your sound. So this is what I wanted from this oscillator. Then we have oscillator B, and oscillator B is kind of adding like the color to the sound in like the mid area, which just feels a little off, a little drifted, a little detuned, even though it's not detuned, it's just a wavetable, right? And it's interesting together. They sound absolutely super thin. As I said, weird wavetables, nice textures, but kind of thin. So this is why we still needed like the good old square wave in this sound, -1 through the sub oscillator here. Right, this is much more powerful, has more body, and all the three together make up for this very textured but at the same time powerful sound. I also added a lot of bright white here. Sorry, by the way, if you can hear construction workers. It's just so hot that I can't close the window while recording. I'm gonna do my best to cut it out of the video Maybe you don't even hear it, but anyways. So yeah, those are the four main sound sources that we are using. So we have this little envelope here, like this, so not completely 100% sustain. And then most importantly, we have this envelope on the filter. So let's activate the filter, and this is going to change everything now. So first of all, the drive lifts it up a lot, makes it a little bit louder, but also like a little more compressed. And then we have this short envelope on the filter, which kind of creates the pluckiness of the sound, right? We don't apply the pluckiness through the amp envelope, because then we would kind of lose the body of the sound, but rather we let the pluckiness come from the high frequencies that only are there when the cutoff is opening for those 98 milliseconds at this point in the song. And then through the octave switches, we get this very, very interesting combination of a bit brighter and much darker feeling plucks in here, right? If we look at the effects, I haven't used all that much. I just add a little bit of dimension to make the sound wide. I would never use unison for something like this, because it will always mess up the phases so much that you won't have the same power. I can show you what I mean. Let's just disable that, and we add unison to our oscillators, like this. And it immediately loses like the accentuation it had before. While here I can just mix it in a little bit, and that's like one of the biggest tips that I have for you in general in sound design. One of the easiest but most important as well. Don't overuse unison. I know it sounds good when you have a saw wave and you just put on unison and then you're like, oh, so many voices. But it's not always good, and especially for those plucky sounds that you want to cut through the mix very well, this is not the right way to go, I would say. So you can see modulation wise, we just have velocity over amp and cutoff. If necessary, we can add this here through the macros. And then we have just a little bit of decay modulation here through automations here to give the sound just a little more live. But that's it already. So this sound is actually pretty easy. And I want to talk about the echo and the reverb a little bit now. So the reverb, I'm going to send you, I'm going to link you the video where this preset is from up here, because it's from an older video here on the channel, and it's just such a crazy reverb. It's this tides algorithm here in the new hybrid, relatively new hybrid reverb, new to Ableton 11 at least, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's doing some kind of filter modulation on the reverb. It feels very, very good. And for a sound like this, it just adds a lot of depth to it, which I really like here. So then I would also like to show you the echo. And here I've used 2 echoes in a row. So I canceled the reverb. I soloed the echo. We're only listening to the echo now. So what can you hear? You can hear that, first of all, it's ping-ponged, but not the, like, kind of not the whole time, because first you can hear it here, then you can hear it there, and then it kind of, like, it's at both sides, and you can hear that it's kind of changing the pitch, right? So I wanted to show you this here. I've used this wobble in the Ableton Echo, and for so many reasons, I think Ableton's Echo is one of the best echo plugins that you can have, and you really don't need to get another one if you don't want to have too many plugins, right? Echo is completely fine. It can do so much. It can sound so analog. It has so many features that are helpful. So we delayed the delay here just a little bit to add like a little bit of weirdness to the groove. We have a little bit of input here, which we dial back with the volume back here, right? So we give 60 dB, minus 18, so we should be around like minus 6, minus 5, minus 7, something like this, with the echo. And yeah, this is dotted quarters, so they sound like this. this wobble is so cool. Let me turn it off. So you can hear without the wobble, it's just a normal echo, but with the wobble, it's kind of changing the pitch slowly, and that just sounds amazing, right? Also, note to myself, when I edit this, I will just raise the volume up here of the echo, so when you're listening to this now, don't worry, it's not as loud in the song as usual, because as usual, if you have everything together, it's only like this. Right? So back to the echo. I added a second echo here, and this is a 16th note echo, but only 4%. So you might be wondering, 4%, what should that do? So it's just a little bit like a 16th shader on the echo that we already did, but the 4% are not all like a real representation of what's happening, because we added almost 20 dB input gain only on the wet signal. So the 4% here get boosted by 20% through this input. And that's very interesting, because it's not only volume that's happening there. I talked about this already several times on the channel, so I'm not going to dive too deep right now, but the input essentially acts like a preamp. So the higher you go with this input here, the more you will add distortion, some kind of saturation, a little bit of clipping maybe. You will get a more compressed sound, right? You will add this to your signal. And in this case, only to the dry signal, to the wet signal. Sorry, if you click this here, you will also add it to the dry signal, which will make everything much louder. But if you go like this, 4% means you basically have the same amount of dry signal still, which was very important for me. But I added a lot of the 16th note echo as well. And you might be wondering, yes, you could do it like this as well, have two chains, go 100% here, without this input, and just go like -15 or something, right? This would kind of be the same volume-wise, but of course you wouldn't have the nice saturation of the input on the echo here. So yeah, this is definitely a nice trick that you can use for yourself. So yeah, we have the echo, we have the reverb. This is our Melodic Techno Pluck. So next up, let's talk about this kind of Steven Botzin, but a bit more modern, kind of. Like, modern is such a weird word in music production. I don't want to say his music is not modern, of course, but just in the sense that he's using like a very, very analog and like kind of raw sounding Moog sound for his kind of melodies, while what we are doing, we are kind of implementing the ways of working that we know from Moog. Like we have, for example, the very low square shaped sub oscillator, right? We have the detuned oscillators here, right? So we get kind of the ideas of the Moog, but we get them into Serum and we advance them with a little bit of unison and with a lot of weird modulations. So I'm not going to go too deep into this melodic pattern because it doesn't really matter for the sound design. It's just important that you can see that it's playing on a lot of different octaves. And there's also some notes that are overlapping and some that do not. Like most of them don't. All of these notes don't overlap, but those three, this is overlapping and this is overlapping. And why is this important? Because it's a gliding lead. So we have mono, so it's only going to be one note played at a time. And we have portamento at 46 seconds, which is glide. So that means one note is played. If another note is played and they overlap, what will happen is they will pitch into each other over the course of 45 milliseconds. If we put legato, it would be a little bit different. I'm going to do it like this here. And yeah, maybe you get the preset, which is free. Download it in the description. Maybe you get it and try out for yourself a little bit. I think that's best. So here in this sound, essentially we have three different, let me loop this part here. We have three different oscillators. And I already told you about the sub oscillator a little bit. So what you can hear, first of all, pulse wave modulated square wave is just, has always just incredible texture, but this is, we know this already. So you can hear that the different notes have different filter kind of positions, right? Like low, very high, low, low. This one gets opened again, so you can see the cutoff is jumping around. It's not the note height, right? The note pitch doesn't modulate it, but the velocity. So if you look at this, you can see that I've implemented a lot of different velocities here. Very, very low, very low, very low, very low. This is high velocity, medium, medium, very, yeah, also medium kind of, and go back to low, right? So now you can see why the filter is moving around so much. This is very interesting, I think, already. So you can see the velocity is mapped to the cutoff and also to the sync, but that's not important for now. First of all, let's have a look at the second oscillator, oscillator B. So for this one, I wanted something to sound very analog in a way, like very detuned, very weird. So what I did is I took this 16th note LFO on the wavetable position. If we wouldn't have that, right, let's bypass it. It would just be another pulse wave modulated square. But like this, it gets a very, very detuned character without having any unison that completely throws it into the stereo image, right? So sub and oscillator B together, they already form a nice combination. This one is at -2, this one at -1, so we have the different octaves already and a little bit of different tonal structures. So lastly, what we're adding is this oscillator A, and I just said I don't like unison that much. This sound is not as plucky and punctual as the other one, so unison is fine, but still notice that it's 2 oscillators without unison and only one has unison. And no, I haven't lowered the width. Sometimes you can even lower the width of the unison oscillator here. I didn't do it here this time because I have enough mono signal that kind of balances it. So this is a saw wave, just a little bit of syncing to give it just a little bit more of a unique texture, and all together we are here, right? So we have a lot of release on this synth, which is also why I need mono, because I don't want those notes to overlap through the release of the amp. I just want the release to happen in such a note where there's no note coming afterwards, so we have a little bit of a tail, right? This is very helpful to also boost up the reverb in the end a little bit and to not fall off a cliff at the point where the note is ending, right? So you can see I have noise as well. It's not active, it's not playing, but it's there. Why is it there? Because I use it as a modulator for the cutoff as well. So look at this, what's happening here. It's like doing those micro modulations, like just randomly moving around a little bit, and this adds some kind of noisy texture, but it's based on the cutoff. It's super nice. It's just much better than with the usual noise, especially for a sound like this, and one of the tricks to make your sound feel a little more analog as well. So we have the distortion, just a little bit of tape saturation here, a fair amount I would say, completely mixed in, and drive is already at 70. So the tape saturation here in Serum is not so strong, so I think that's okay. Then we have a lot of reverb here. I could have also applied it like in Ableton. I prefer this actually, but I thought if you download this as a preset, it's nice to already have the reverb on the sound, and so it feels a bit more full, and then when you want, you can just disable it and add your own reverbs in your own productions. And this is already it about the sound, kind of, when you just look at Serum. So it's not so complicated. We can just move into the effects real quick. So this overdrive is pretty interesting. Boosting around the mids, only 10%, but it adds a lot of presence to the sound. When I enable it, you can really hear that it comes closer, even if it's only 10%. So this is what I wanted to achieve, to have the sound a bit more closer. Like we can maybe listen with the beat and first without the overdrive. So you can hear more of a mixing decision, so a bit more detailed already, but still working the way. So now here I just copied the same echo as here because I think it just works very well, and why not using it twice? I think in this whole session I've used it like 2 or 3 times. So I don't have to explain this one. You saw this, and then just cutting a little bit here, and there we go. So those are the 2 synth. This is the kind of the lead synth, and it's very melodic. I think it's kind of, it feels like a good sound for meditation. Like, of course it feels still like dancey, but the notes, they are very pleasing to me, so it's very soft in a way. And then you have this very dark pluck, which counteracts this, so I think this is why those 2 work so well together, and why so many tracks in the moment in melodic techno have this exact same structure. They have this kind of dark bass pluck, and then connected with like a more brighter and more like good vibe spreading synth to kind of have a good balance here. So if that was helpful for you, follow us on the channel. We have a lot of videos like this, a lot of melodic techno videos, of course. They're linked here in the playlist. And next week you are going to hear more of this whole thing. And let me just show you briefly what awaits you next week.